Nobody builds the largest infrastructure project in human history out of generosity. There is always a reason. And in China's case, the reason was something Beijing could not say publicly without triggering a financial panic. By 2013, China's construction machine was eating itself alive. The country had built more cement in 3 years than the United States had built in the entire 20th century. Its steel mills were producing metal that had nowhere to go. Its state construction companies employed tens of millions of workers who needed projects or they needed to be laid off. And laying off tens of millions of workers in a country with no social safety net is not an economic problem. It is a revolution waiting for a date. Xi Jinping needed an exit. He found one in September 2013, standing at a podium in Kazakhstan. He announced the Belt and Road Initiative, $1 trillion to build ports, railways, roads, and power plants across 140 countries. He called it the New Silk Road. He called it a gift to the developing world. What he did not mention was that every contract would be built by Chinese firms, staffed by Chinese workers, financed by Chinese state banks at interest rates, buried deep in agreements that most recipient governments never fully analyzed. 140 countries signed. The construction crews arrived within months, and for a few years it looked exactly like the generous miracle Xi had described. It was not. In 2007, the president of Sri Lanka needed money. The country was in the middle of a brutal civil war. International lenders were hesitant, and he had a vision for a deep water port in his home district of Hambantota, a small southern town with no particular strategic significance and almost no commercial shipping traffic. China said yes immediately. No environmental review, no independent feasibility study, no questions about whether a port in Hambantota made any economic sense whatsoever. Just an agreement, a loan at rates that seemed manageable on paper, and Chinese construction crews who arrived and began building within months. The port was completed in 2010, and then almost nothing happened. Ships did not come. The commercial logic that was supposed to justify the project never materialized. In its first full year of operation, Hambantota Port handled 34 ships. The Port of Colombo, 240 kilometers away, was handling thousands. The loan payments kept coming regardless. By 2017, Sri Lanka was drowning. The government had borrowed from China across dozens of projects, and the combined debt service was consuming a portion of national revenue that the country simply could not sustain. Negotiations went on for months. China's solution was elegant and devastating in equal measure. Sign over the port, 99-year lease. In exchange, China would restructure the surrounding debt. Sri Lanka signed. A sovereign nation handed a strategically located deep water port on the Indian Ocean to a foreign government for nearly a century because it could not repay a loan it never should have taken for a project that never should have been built. India watched from 300 kilometers across the water in absolute silence, the silence of a country that had just understood something important about its neighborhood and who was rearranging it. The Hambantota story was supposed to stay quiet. China preferred it that way. But in the age of investigative journalism, leaked government documents, and leaders who needed someone to blame for bad deals, it did not stay quiet for long. By 2018, the term debt trap diplomacy had entered the vocabulary of every finance ministry in the developing world. And something started shifting that Beijing had not modeled in any of its projections. Malaysia elected a new prime minister in 2018. Mahathir Mohamad landed in Beijing, sat across from Chinese officials, and canceled $22 billion worth of belt and road projects with a directness that left the room visibly uncomfortable. He called the contracts unfair. He called the interest rates predatory. He flew home, and the project stopped. Myanmar looked at a Chinese port project originally priced at $7.3 billion and renegotiated it down to $1.3 billion. Tanzania canceled a $10 billion port deal entirely. Sierra Leone terminated a Chinese-funded airport project after its own finance ministry concluded the country would be in debt servitude for decades. Pakistan, the crown jewel of the entire Belt and Road Initiative, began demanding fundamental renegotiation of terms across the China-Pakistan economic corridor after discovering that the energy contracts it had signed guaranteed Chinese companies' profits regardless of whether Pakistani consumers could actually afford the electricity being generated. But the most significant shift happened in Africa. Between 2020 and 2023, more than 30 African nations entered formal debt restructuring negotiations with Chinese state banks. These were not isolated cases of mismanagement. This was a pattern so consistent across different governments, different continents, and different political systems that it could only mean one thing. The fine print had finally been read. And what it said was the same in every language. In 2023, a researcher at A-Data, a development finance research lab in Virginia, published a study that received almost no mainstream coverage but circulated through every serious foreign policy institution on Earth within weeks. The finding was simple and staggering. China was now the world's largest debt collector, and it could not collect. Across the Belt and Road portfolio, Chinese state banks were sitting on approximately $385 billion in loans to countries that could not service them. Not would not, could not. The distinction matters because it meant no amount of political pressure, renegotiation threat, or asset seizure would produce the money. It simply did not exist in the borrowing country's budgets. Zambia defaulted on its Chinese debt in 2020 and spent 3 years in restructuring negotiations so complicated that the International Monetary Fund publicly criticized China for stalling. Ethiopia defaulted. Ghana defaulted. Pakistan required emergency IMF intervention to avoid complete collapse while simultaneously owing China billions through the economic corridor that was supposed to be its development salvation. China had built a trap that worked exactly as designed. It had extracted ports, land rights, resource concessions, and political loyalty from dozens of countries. But the financial return on $1 trillion of lending was turning into a number that no Chinese bank could put in its annual report without causing a domestic panic. Here's the detail that makes this almost poetic. The mechanism China had used so effectively against Sri Lanka, against Zambia, against Pakistan, the mechanism of lending more than a country could repay and then claiming the asset when it defaulted, that same mechanism was now operating in reverse. China had lent so much to so many countries that it could not afford to let them fail, because if they failed, the losses would land on Chinese state banks, which are backed by the Chinese government, which means the bill would ultimately land on the savings of ordinary Chinese citizens who had been told for 20 years that the Belt and Road was making China rich and respected across the world. It was not, and Beijing knew it before anyone else did. China did not abandon the Belt and Road. It did something more interesting. It quietly changed what the Belt and Road actually was. After 2021, the grand infrastructure announcements slowed dramatically. The ports and railways were replaced by fiber optic cables, digital payment systems, surveillance technology, and green energy projects. Smaller, faster, harder to renegotiate, harder to cancel, and significantly cheaper to build while producing the same strategic outcome: dependency. The new Belt and Road does not need a 99-year lease on a port. It needs your national telecommunications infrastructure running on Huawei equipment. It needs your government's digital payment system built on Chinese architecture. It needs your power grid connected to Chinese-manufactured solar panels with proprietary software that only Beijing can service. Physical assets can be renegotiated. Code is considerably harder to return. But the deeper lesson of this entire story is not about China. It is about the fundamental lie at the heart of every great power's foreign policy. The lie that money can be cleanly converted into loyalty. That investment produces gratitude. That infrastructure builds alliances. It does not. It builds resentment, dependency, and eventually revolt. Every empire that tried to purchase influence at scale discovered this. China spent $1 trillion and 140 countries to rediscover it again. The world is not for sale. It just sometimes accepts the down payment before saying no. If this video changed your view of big money and big politics, give it a like. It really helps the channel grow. Let me know in the comments, do you think the digital belt and road is more dangerous than the original? I read every comment. Subscribe. The next episode will be even tougher.